There is a corporation in Illinois that owns more than 60 marine brands, controls 50% of every outboard engine bolted to a boat in America, and was hit with a $133 million antitrust verdict for monopolizing the engine market. And yet most people who walk into a boat show this weekend will have no idea they are shopping inside a closed system designed by a single company. We are going to expose the engineering and financial structure behind America's marine industry and show you the only three categories of boats worth buying with your money. If you have ever browsed the aisles of the Miami Boat Show or scrolled through listings on Boat Trader, you have probably felt overwhelmed by the sheer number of options. You see Boston Whaler and think heritage fishing brand. You see Sea Ray and think luxury cruiser. You see Bayliner and think affordable family runabout. You see Lund and Crestliner and think aluminum fishing legends from the Midwest. These feel like rival companies fighting for your business. They are not. Every single one of those brands is owned by one company called the Brunswick Corporation. Brunswick is headquartered in Mettawa, Illinois, reported $5.2 billion in revenue in 2024, and operates in 26 countries. They own the boats, they own the engines, they own the electronics, and as of 2019, they even own the world's largest boat club, where you rent time on the water. When a corporation controls every layer of an industry from the engine to the hull to the fish finder on the dashboard, what you have is not a competitive marketplace. It is a vertically integrated monopoly wearing 60 different logos. And the consequences of that monopoly are about to cost you a lot more than you think. The story of how one company came to dominate American boating starts not on the water, but in a woodworking shop in Cincinnati. In 1845, a Swiss immigrant named John Moses Brunswick opened a machine shop to build carriages. He quickly pivoted to manufacturing billiard tables, and by the 1950s, the Brunswick Balk Colander Company was a household name in bowling alleys and pool halls across the country. Then in 1961, Brunswick made the acquisition that would change the marine industry forever. They purchased Mercury Marine, the engine maker based in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Overnight, Brunswick controlled the most critical component of every powerboat in America, the thing that makes it move. With Mercury in their pocket, Brunswick went on a 30-year buying spree that consumed the boating landscape. In the 1980s, they acquired Bayliner and Sea Ray, two of the highest volume boat builders on the planet. Then came Boston Whaler in 1996, the brand famous for cutting a boat in half and watching both halves still float. Then Lund, Crestliner, Lowe, Harris Pontoons, Princecraft, and dozens more. By 2005, nearly 83% of Brunswick's revenue came from marine engines and boats. They had completed the transformation from a billiard table company into the most dominant force in recreational marine history. But what does vertical integration actually mean for the person writing a check at the dealership? It means the company that builds your boat also builds the engine inside it, manufactures the electronics on the dash, distributes the replacement parts through its own supply chain, and operates the dealership network that services your warranty claims. At every point in the life cycle of your boat, Brunswick is on both sides of the transaction, and in 1998, a jury of American citizens decided that Brunswick had crossed the line. 21 independent boat builders filed an antitrust lawsuit in Little Rock, Arkansas, accusing Brunswick of using Mercury Marine's dominant market position to strangle their businesses. The boat builders alleged that Brunswick engaged in predatory pricing on stern drive and inboard engines, offering artificially low prices to its own subsidiary boat brands while charging independent builders significantly more for the same hardware. The goal, according to the plaintiffs, was to make it financially impossible to compete against a company that could subsidize its own boats with below-cost engines. After 10 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 2 days. They awarded the independent builders $44.4 million, which under federal antitrust law was automatically tripled to $133 million. It was one of the largest private antitrust verdicts in American history at the time. The Federal Trade Commission launched its own investigation into Mercury Marine's sales practices. Brunswick appealed, but the blueprint was exposed for all to see. Control the engine supply, and you control the entire industry. And here is what makes that blueprint even more dangerous today. Mercury Marine is now the only remaining American manufacturer of outboard engines. Every single competitor, from Outboard Marine Corporation to the original Evinrude and Johnson brands, has either gone bankrupt, been acquired, or moved overseas. Mercury now powers more than 50% of all recreational boats in the United States and over 60% of outboards 150 horsepower and above. When you walk into a dealership and look at a boat from a company that is not owned by Brunswick, there is still a better than even chance that the engine hanging off the transom was made by Brunswick anyway. But the monopoly over engines is only half the story. The real price you pay shows up in the quality of what they build. A former employee of Sea Ray's Merritt Island, Florida manufacturing plant posted on a public boating forum that the boats were being, in his words, mutilated by undertrained, underpaid, and unhappy employees who had no idea what they were doing and no incentive to learn. He stated publicly that even though he worked at the factory, he would never buy a Sea Ray himself. He predicted that Brunswick would destroy the brand the same way they had already stripped and sold off other acquisitions like Robalo. This is not an isolated voice. The Better Business Bureau is filled with complaints from Brunswick boat owners describing brand new Crestliners that leak from the hull on delivery, Mercury engines with starter bolts that back themselves out, trim sensors that puncture hydraulic motors, and fuel pumps that fail within the first season. When your boats and your engines are built by the same parent corporation focused on Wall Street targets instead of owner satisfaction, quality becomes a cost center to be minimized, not a standard to be upheld. And then there is the silent killer hiding inside the hull of nearly every fiberglass production boat on the water. It is called osmotic blistering, and marine surveyors estimate that 1 in 4 fiberglass boats will develop it. Here is how it works. The exterior surface of a fiberglass hull is coated with a layer called gel coat, which is essentially pigmented polyester resin. Despite looking impenetrable, gel coat is actually porous at the molecular level. Over time, water molecules migrate through the gel coat and accumulate in microscopic voids inside the fiberglass laminate. These voids contain uncured resin and chemical residues left over from the manufacturing process. When water reaches those chemicals, it triggers an osmotic reaction that creates an acidic solution trapped under extreme pressure inside the hull wall, enough to physically blister and delaminate the hull from the inside out. And here is the critical detail. The prevalence and severity of osmotic blistering is directly tied to manufacturing quality. When a factory worker fails to apply gel coat uniformly, when resin is not mixed to the proper ratio, when laminate layers are rushed and trap air pockets, those are the voids where water will eventually collect and begin destroying the hull. A meticulous builder working in a controlled environment with time to do the job correctly will produce a hull with minimal void content. A production line pushing volume for a publicly traded conglomerate will produce hulls riddled with the microscopic defects that become tomorrow's blister epidemic. Repairing osmotic blisters on a single hull requires stripping the gel coat, drying the laminate for weeks or months, and applying an epoxy barrier coat. The cost ranges from $10,000 to $30,000, and it often exceeds the remaining value of the boat, which brings us to the financial trap that completes the cycle. A new boat depreciates between 20 and 30% the moment you take delivery. By year 5, you have lost 40 to 50% of your purchase price. Industry data shows that at a compounded rate of 15% per year, a boat purchased for $100,000 is worth roughly $44,000 after just 5 years. You are losing more than $11,000 a year in depreciation alone before you factor in slip fees, insurance, fuel, and maintenance. Now combine that depreciation curve with the possibility of a catastrophic hull failure from osmotic blistering, and the economics become devastating. Your $60,000 boat develops blisters that cost $20,000 to repair, and by the time the work is finished, the boat is only worth $35,000. You are underwater financially on an asset that is literally underwater structurally. The warranty will not save you either. Brunswick boat owners report the same bureaucratic nightmare that plagues every conglomerate warranty system. The dealer cannot authorize repairs without corporate approval. Corporate requires photographic documentation and multi-step claim submissions. Parts are frequently on backorder. Boats sit on dealer lots for months while owners continue making loan payments and insurance premiums on a vessel they cannot use. So if the dominant player in the industry has a documented history of antitrust behavior, quality complaints from its own factory workers, and a financial structure that punishes the buyer at every turn, what do you actually do? You buy from the three categories that exist outside the Brunswick ecosystem. Category 1 is the independent family-owned builder. Companies like Grady White, Regulator, Scout, and Everglades have resisted acquisition and are still run by the people who founded them or their families. Grady White's president has been with the company for over 30 years, and many of their factory workers have decades of tenure at the same facility. When your employees have been laminating hulls for 20 years in the same building, they develop a level of craftsmanship that no corporate training program can replicate. These boats are more expensive up front, but they hold their resale value dramatically better than the mass-produced alternatives. Independent data shows that a Grady White depreciates only 28% over its first 5 years, which is one of the lowest rates in the entire marine industry. A comparable budget brand can lose twice that amount in the same period. Category 2 is the pre-acquisition used boat. If you love a specific Brunswick brand, buy the model that was built before Brunswick bought the company. A Boston whaler built before 1996, when Brunswick acquired the brand for just $27 million, has a hand-laid hull and build quality that current production cannot match. A Sea Ray from the early 1980s was designed and built by a team of craftsmen who answered to the founder, not to a conglomerate managing 60 brands at once. These older boats have already fully depreciated, meaning your financial exposure is minimal. And because they were built during an era when brand reputation was the only marketing strategy a company had, the construction quality is often superior to anything rolling off a modern production line. Category 3 is the aluminum alternative. While fiberglass boats are vulnerable to osmotic blistering and gel coat degradation, aluminum hulls are immune to these chemical failures entirely. A welded aluminum hull from a quality builder will never blister, never delaminate, and never develop the kind of hidden structural rot that destroys fiberglass boats from within. Companies like Hughescraft, Duckworth, and Thunderjet build commercial-grade aluminum boats designed for the punishing conditions of the Pacific Northwest. These hulls are fully welded, not riveted, and they can take impacts that would crack a fiberglass hull into pieces. The trade-off is ride quality. Aluminum transmits vibration more than fiberglass, and the resale market is smaller. But you are buying a boat that will outlast you, and the total cost of ownership over 20 years is a fraction of what you will spend maintaining a fiberglass hull. The recreational boating industry generates over $50 billion a year in the United States, and Brunswick Corporation sits at the center of it, collecting revenue from the engines, the hulls, the electronics, the parts, the boat clubs, and the financing. That is not a free market. That is a Tollbooth on the water. The company that lost a $133 million antitrust verdict did not shrink. It doubled down on acquisition. It consolidated factories. It eliminated competitors. And it is counting on you to be too distracted by the gel coat shine and the Bluetooth stereo to notice that the company stamped on the engine is the same company stamped on the hull, the fish finder, and the extended warranty contract you just signed. Check the ownership, check the build date, and never underestimate the value of a hull that was welded by a family shop instead of laminated by a conglomerate. If you found this video valuable, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We are going deeper into the industries that do not want you looking behind the curtain.